We have a ridiculous amount of exciting news today, including FSR4 AI-based, been in development already for 9 to 12 months, and this is not a leak, this is official from AMD. We have Cyberpunk finally getting FSR3, but is it actually as good as we were hoping? We have AFMF 2 support for Ryzen AI 300 APUs, along with something called variable graphics memory. Let's talk about that. We have the PS5 Pro officially having better ray tracing than any current AMD GPU, and that means upcoming AMD GPUs could have better ray tracing than previously expected. We have leaks for Intel's upcoming CPU performance, all of the specs for the entire lineup leaked ahead of time, NVIDIA making their 4070 worse while apparently charging more money for it, and we have some confirmation in benchmarks that the performance is indeed worse, and by how much. We have the PlayStation 5 Pro performance numbers being leaked out in at least one game and seeing what developers think about that. We have Microsoft, meanwhile, cutting 650 jobs in its gaming division. Is Star Wars Jedi Survivor finally fixed on PC with Denuvo removed? We also have an entire publisher's team just completely resigning at Annapurna Interactive, and how does that affect the development of Control 2 and some movie deals with Annapurna? And also Jawa has expanded its program for instantly buying your GPU to also instantly buy your CPU, offering you the quickest and most convenient, simplest way to sell your parts to fund your upgrade. At this point, you just follow the link in the video description, and you can click the Sell Your CPU button along with the Sell Your GPU button I've talked about before. At this point, they're accepting most AM4 CPUs and LGA 1200 CPUs. And you get it. It's a pretty simple, easy process. Like, check it out. It's literally you just share details about your part for an instant offer by clicking the link in the video description or pinned comment. You ship it. You print your free shipping label, so the offer they're sending you includes all of the shipping and everything within it. They inspect the part to make sure everything checks out, and most sellers get paid within 1 business day after the part is received. And this takes out all the hassle out of creating your own listing, taking pictures, dealing with buyers, and all of that, which you could still, of course, do on Jawa as well if you do want to do that sell it yourself route, and also check out their deals to buy parts to get some amazing options for your upgrade, and you can use code OWEN10 to save $10 off your first purchase. And thanks, Jawa, for sponsoring this section of today's video. Let's get back to the absolute main topic of today, which has to be FSR4 AI-based, designed to improve quality and maximize power efficiency. So this is a headline from Tom's Hardware, and this is coming on a series of absolute bombshell interviews with Jack Wynn. I guess it's actually all coming from kind of the same series of discussions that Tom's Hardware had with Jack Wynn, who is an AMD vice president in charge of their gaming division. So he is the source for information on this topic. This is official. This is not leaks and rumors. And apparently, while discussing actually handheld devices, the topic of FSR4 came up. Not codenamed, not hinted at, but literally just straight up specifically talked about. From Tom's Hardware, they're saying, the comments came as Wynn was talking about handheld gaming and battery life. But based on AMD's history of open source architecture agnostic algorithms, FSR should be for more than just handhelds. Then they say they've slightly cleaned up the text from a audio recording and here we go. So let's get the direct quote from AMD. Jack Wynn: on the handheld side, my #1 priority is battery life. If you look at the Asus ROG Ally or the Lenovo Legion Go, it's just that the battery life is not there. I need multiple hours. I need to play Wukong for 3 hours, not 60 minutes. This is where frame generation and interpolation come in. So this is the FSR4 that we're adding. So right there, this is interesting because it's coming in the context of wanting to improve battery life. So if you want to reach a higher frame rate without your GPU actually having to render those frames fully, frame interpolation, frame generation is a way to go, although obviously, as I've discussed many times when talking about frame generation, it's not as good as the real thing. But here's where he continues: because FSR2 and FSR3 were analytical-based generation, it was filter-based. Now, we did that because we wanted something with a very fast time to market. what I told my team was, guys, that's not where the future is going. So we completely pivoted the team about 9 to 12 months ago to go AI based. So much of this is absolutely huge. So first of all, they're basically admitting FSR2 and FSR3 are what they are because honestly, I think AMD was kind of caught flat-footed and needed to respond quickly. They needed a very fast time to market to have something to compete with NVIDIA's feature set. But given that it was not an AI-based approach, it was a filter-based approach, it's not necessarily competing at the quality level that NVIDIA's offering had, right? So we're getting that 9 to 12 months ago, Jack Quinn told the team, guys, that's not where the future is going. The filter-based analytical approach, not the future. We need to go AI-based. So honestly, this is interesting because to me, that might explain a little bit of why I feel like a lot of people thought that FSR2 and even 3, updates coming were kind of slow, and FSR3 maybe took a lot longer to get implemented than people wanted. Improvements to FSR2 algorithm upscaling haven't been as fast as we'd like or as frequent as we like. Well, maybe that's explained by the fact that, a year ago, the team might have been starting to switch over to developing an AI-related version, which might have reduced the amount of, employee time they could devote to improving the non-AI-based versions when they knew that really the future was those AI-based versions. So that's pretty interesting. Again, this is not leaks and rumors. This is direct from AMD. That they're going AI-based, and that is the future, and they've been already working on it for quite a while. Anyway, the quote continues, so now we're going AI-based frame generation, frame interpolation, and the idea is increased efficiency to maximize battery life. Now, again, I find this super interesting that he's talking so much about the handheld space, efficiency, and battery life, because if you follow the rumors related to the next Xbox console, there's a massive amount of rumors that Xbox may be working on a gaming handheld device. Now, that's by no means like an official thing that the next Xbox is a handheld, or that, or maybe not exclusively so. But there's basically a lot of buzz around the possibility that Xbox could have something like a Steam Deck style, gaming handheld. So if they're going with AMD for their hardware, and Microsoft was working on a gaming handheld PC style device, could that explain why Jack Quinn is so absolutely, focused on the importance of increasing maximum battery life? That's just me reading one potential idea into this, but being that focused on that handheld space for a big feature like this certainly sounds interesting to me. Anyway, he says, and then we could lock the frames per second. Maybe it's 30 frames per second or 35. My number one goal right now is to maximize battery life. I think that's the biggest complaint. I read the returns too from the retailer where people want to be able to play these games. And that's the end of the quote on this topic from Jack Quinn. So here when he's talking about returns from retailer, I think he's talking about like ROG Ally and things like that. Why do they get returned? Maybe people either aren't able to play a big game that they wanted good performance on, or if they can play it, they're not getting the battery life in it that they wanted. So maybe he's kind of discussing that. Now, again, I could be off on the whole like next Xbox console idea. Maybe it is just the fact that these handheld gaming PCs do seem to be taking off and selling quite a bit. So maybe Jack Quinn's just interested in expanding that portion of the market. But like I said, I think it's very, very interesting how focused on that he is when talking about this FSR 4. Now, another thing to note, though, is he never specifically says upscaling. I would imagine that would just be implied as part of this, but that is never actually directly quoted. Now, this is also someone just speaking, right? And sometimes when you're speaking, you misspeak, or it's not the same thing as a planned out press release, right? So it's possible when he says AI-based frame generation, frame interpolation, it's possible that he meant like frame generation and upscaling, or, or just forgot to mention the upscaling. But it is very telling that there is no specific mention of upscaling in this quote. Now, personally, when I look at the current version of FSR, upscaling is its biggest weakness. Their version of frame generation, frame interpolation, isn't, in my opinion, in actual practice, as far behind DLSS frame generation as their upscaling is. I still don't feel like FSR frame generation is always quite as good of frame pacing, and sometimes the individual frame quality can be a bit behind. But in other words, if I was going to prioritize what they need to catch up on, in my opinion, it's more the upscaling itself rather than the frame generation, although both improving would obviously be for the best. Anyway, I think this is really interesting, especially given the fact that the PS5 Pro has apparently also motivated AMD's development of advanced ray tracing for its future GPUs. Because this means that AMD is, I mean, at least on paper, it looks like they're really trying to push more into the NVIDIA style of GPUs, right? With those features, AI-based, good ray tracing performance. Now, whether they actually fully catch up or not, that's a whole other question, right? Now, also, I want to talk about this a bit because when I did a video talking about trying to match the PS5 Pro hardware on a gaming PC, and I mentioned that the PS5 Pro would probably have better ray tracing performance than current AMD GPUs, I got pushback in the comments section saying that it's probably just moving, to be equivalent to like the 7000 series with RDNA 3, which had a little bit of a ray tracing improvement. But no, at least not according to Mark Cerny, who, would know these things, okay? So the direct quote is that the PS5 Pro uses new advanced ray tracing feature sets that AMD created as the next step in their roadmap architecture. And now here's the important part, but if you look around, there are no other AMD GPUs that use it yet. So Mark Cerny is specifically stating in a direct quote that no AMD GPUs currently on the market use the advanced ray tracing features that are coming with the PS5 Pro GPU. And he specifically says, we motivated, so PlayStation motivated, the development. And I'm very happy we did so. The response from the developers has been extraordinarily great. So, in other words, let's say that this advanced ray tracing feature set is in RDNA 4, which we get maybe at the beginning of 2025. Again, that's not officially confirmed cycle yet. But if there's a big advancement in ray tracing performance, and if that AI-based upscaling and frame generation is ready to go at that point, again, we don't know, but if it's been development for 9 to 12 months already and there's still more time till these GPUs launch, maybe that's a real possibility. And then again, the rumors are AMD's targeting kind of the mid-range and low-range. Well, if you suddenly had some mid-range GPUs that are priced well, that have AI-based upscaling and frame generation and aren't as far behind in ray tracing performance, I mean, I kind of like what Jack Quinn's been saying with all of these interviews. I mean, I'm hopeful that we get some really good competition here in the next generation, in the price points that people are actually looking to buy. Of course, maybe all of this falls through, maybe all of it sucks, maybe AMD doesn't price them well. And that's going to be the big thing too here, is if AMD can deliver on all of these huge feature set things, can they please actually launch at a competitive price rather than launch priced too high, then have the price drop after launch once all the reviews have already been negative, and then reach good price competition? Because that seems to have been their MO in the past. So that would be the big thing for me, is if they catch up on the feature set and then actually price extremely aggressively from day one, that's the road to building market share. But we'll have to see what comes of it. Now, it's not FSR 4 yet, but Cyberpunk has been, long announced as one of the games that would eventually get FSR 3 frame generation, but people have been waiting and waiting and waiting. However, we finally do have the Cyberpunk patch for AMD FSR 3. However, there's a huge downside to this. Now, I've tried this out myself. I was going to do a dedicated video on it, but I'm back to teaching right now. I'm getting ready for my daughter's birthday party later this afternoon. Like, I've got a lot going on. So probably no dedicated video from me. on the Cyberpunk patch. But I have tried it out a lot. I have a lot of hands-on experience with it, and I've looked up, other people's experiences and tests and things like that. And first of all, the number one disappointment is it's not FSR 3.1, which means that if you were an NVIDIA 3000 series or 2000 series user who wanted to use DLSS upscaling but have frame generation through AMD's FSR 3 frame generation, if it was FSR 3.1, you could have done that. You could have used the DLSS upscaler and the FSR 3 frame generation. However, they have not implemented FSR 3.1. They've implemented FSR 3, which means that if you want to use the frame generation, you have to use the FSR pathway. Also, this means for AMD users, if you had wanted to use XeSS upscaling, which I think in Cyberpunk often has better image quality. By the way, this did bring XeSS 1.3 along with this patch. If you had been an AMD user wanting to use the XeSS upscaling baseline, but then use AMD's FSR 3 frame generation, again, if it was FSR 3.1, you could have done that. We are only getting FSR 3. Not only that, but in my playtesting, I didn't develop a bunch of side-by-side footage. I just didn't have that time. But in my hands-on use, the FSR 3 upscaling wasn't looking great. And again, 3.1 would have brought image quality enhancements to the baseline upscaler. This FSR 3 version doesn't do that. And in some cases, I think looks worse than the FSR 2.1 implementation that's already in the game. And you can, they still left FSR 2.1 in the game, which is almost maybe an admission that the developers might think that FSR 3 implementation might look worse than 2.1. So if you're not using frame generation, maybe use FSR 2. Anyway, just saying that it's not just me with those thoughts, because this article here is going over a few videos with some side-by-side footage that are noting the maybe not amazing quality of the FSR 3 implementation here. So unfortunately, I think a lot of people, especially, like I said, NVIDIA 2 or 3000 series users who wanted to maybe use frame generation might want to stick to the mods if you were already using one. Because the mods already let you use any upscalers, the DLSS upscalers, the baseline, and then use the frame generation. But this patch breaks mods, although I'm sure some of them will be fixed. So that's another downside to it. Another thing I didn't like is just switching the frame generation on in this patch feels really clunky. Because when you turn on FSR 3 frame generation, unlike in most games, the game actually requires a full restart to turn the feature on. When you turn, and then I've noticed that once you restart the game, VSync is now grayed out. So if you were going to go over your monitor's maximum refresh rate, you couldn't use the in-game VSync to limit it. Also, the full screen mode disappears, and you only have access to windowed full screen, which was kind of interesting. Anyway, so it looks like the whole game kind of restarts and runs a bit differently when you kick on frame generation, and then I don't know, it just something about it just doesn't feel as nice as it could be. Now, in the end, this is a game that came out in 2020, so it's kind of nice that they're actually updating it at all. But so I guess maybe I should look at it from that perspective. But at the same time, I would really like to see FSR 3.1, and that's not what we got. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. So AMD's AFMF 2 and variable graphics memory now available with Ryzen AI 300 APUs. Boosts FPS by 78%. Now, AFMF2 is a driver-level frame generation. It's already been available in a preview driver for a number of GPUs, but it looks like it's now expanded to support the Ryzen AI 300 APUs. I've already talked about AFMF2 in the past, but hey, variable graphics memory, that's kind of interesting. If we scroll down here, by the way, all my sources will be linked in the video description if you want to take a closer look yourself. But what's going on here is it looks like you can now kick on variable graphics memory, and you can also allocate dedicated graphics memory. And anyway, it looks like it's cool to have the option. The feature allows users to allocate a dedicated pool of memory to the integrated graphics from the system memory. The memory will be in addition to the 512 megabytes dedicated allocation that is there by default and should not be confused with shared graphics memory, which is a feature already available on modern-day AMD APUs with integrated graphics. Anyway, I haven't been able to test it out to see, what it can do for performance or anything like that yet, but just be aware that feature's out there. Now, Intel Core Ultra 5 245K Arrow Lake 14-core CPU has been benchmarked. I mean, it's been leaked in a single benchmark, showing 6% faster than the 14600K in multi-core performance, actually slightly slower in single-core performance, apparently running pretty cool and consuming up to 160 watts. Now, to be clear though, this is like a leaked CPU Z benchmark screenshot that we're going off of here. And also the actual post says that I believe when this is translated, says that the software might not be fully optimized yet at this point. So, better performance when the chip actually launches could certainly be possible. But anyway, it's looking like the core and P-core, E-core situation is the same as the 14600K. But anyway, we really need independent third-party benchmarks to confirm what the overall performance will be. But that's what we've got from a leaked benchmark. Now, for the entire Intel Core Ultra 200K lineup, we actually have the whole thing being leaked by BenchLife. I'm showing it nicely charted out here by video cards. Again, sources will be in the video description. So it's looking like the full launch is going to be Core Ultra 9 285K with 8 P cores, 16 E cores. And you can see the cache sizes, the boost clock speeds. So we're not seeing any like 6 gigahertz chips here or anything like that. The Core Ultra 7 265K, 8P 12E. The Core Ultra 7 265KF will be 8P 12E. Core Ultra 5 245K will be 6P 8E. And the Core Ultra 5 245KF will be 6P 8E. Anyway, but that one, again, the KF misses the integrated graphics. Again, if they have the F at the end, misses the integrated graphics. So I'll be interested to see how this launch goes from Intel. Intel has claimed that none of the stability issues that we saw on the 13th and 14th gen chips should be impacting their newer generation of products. Hopefully that's true. Anyway, how about NVIDIA with their 4070 GDDR6 version, as opposed to the original model which came with GDDR6X. We've been seeing a number of models launch now at this point, and it's looking like one of them has launched in Germany at an even higher price than the GDDR6X version. So I would be less annoyed by this whole GDDR6 version versus the 6X version if it came with a small discount, because it's got to be cheaper to manufacture. So how about you knock the price down 5% or something? Or if you're not going to make the original version, how about you actually slightly rename this product, stick another like letter at the end of the name or something to indicate that it's slightly different, and then maybe change the overall MSRP, something like that. But no, it's looking like they're coming out at either the same price or, for this particular model, at least on the current pricing at launch, actually more expensive than the full GDDR6X version, which is annoying. Now, we now have at least 2 reviews that I've been able to find featuring this card. Let me zoom out here so we can see more of them. So WCCF Tech has reviewed a GDDR6 version of the 4070, and up against the normal 4070, that would be the GDDR6X. And you can see there's not a massive performance difference. We're seeing things like 63 versus 60. 85, 83. There's not massive differences. That's for one game. That's Alan Wake 2. There's a whole bunch of games tested at this WCCF Tech review. Again, feel free to take out the full, look in the video description, follow the link if you want to look at the whole review. Hardware Unboxed just published a review this morning. Again, they have a whole big 12-game average you could look at if you want, but if you look at individual games, you can see, again, kind of a small difference here. We've seen like 85 versus 89, but it is noticeable. Now, in some games, there's no performance difference, but in other games, it can be up to about a 5% difference, which is kind of annoying considering it's costs the same or more, apparently, to actually buy, and that it's not clearly distinguished that you're getting a worse product. So that's just frustrating, and yay, anti-consumer practices. Now, let's talk about, speaking of benchmarks, how about the PlayStation 5 Pro? Okay, so again, when I was talking about my PC trying to match the PS5 Pro specs and performance, I saw a lot of comments talking about, well, they claimed up to 45% faster performance. And, up to can mean a lot of things. And people were also suspicious that it could be relying on the new upscaler in order to achieve that 45% performance uplift. Now, at this point, we don't have any officially available information on this, but there does appear to be at least a leaked benchmark result talking about how the dynamic resolution range has been increased without relying on PSSR. And the frame rate numbers actually improved. Now, I saw this at WCCF Tech, but it looks like they got the information from a Moore's Law is Dead video. And the information was apparently coming from a PS5 developer working on their game on the PS5 versus the PS5 Pro. Looks like in their initial testing of the PS5 Pro version, it looks like they were able to change the variable resolution scaling, dynamic resolution scaling in the base PS5 version was going from 1080p to 1600p in a dynamic resolution range, and the frame rates were running between 45 to 60 FPS, whereas the same game on the PS5 Pro had a resolution range between 1600p and a full native 4K without using PSSR upscaling, and it was running at a locked 60 frames per second without any drops. So it does look like there is a pretty substantial performance increase on the GPU just in terms of raw performance rather than only being reliant on PSSR or something like that for that performance boost. And again, if you just look at the hardware specs, there's tons more compute units and some increased memory bandwidth. It makes sense that the GPU will be a lot more powerful. Anyway, and again, we had Mark Cerny talking about for ray tracing the newer hardware. It's not available in any current AMD GPU with ray tracing improvements, all of that. Now, while PlayStation is getting some pushback against their PS5 Pro based on its pricing, but they are, expanding their business, all of that. We have Microsoft cutting their gaming division even more, cutting another 650 jobs. They're saying it's mostly in corporate and support, so games themselves shouldn't directly be affected, at least according to them officially. We'll have to see what really comes of that. But in general, it just kind of get the feeling that Microsoft is, I don't know, something will be different soon with Microsoft's Xbox brand, and it seems like they're still indicating they will have an Xbox console. But I don't know, guys. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's going to be that handheld thing. Maybe it'll be almost more like a PC rather than a dedicated console, or maybe they'll do both. I don't know. I wouldn't mind Windows having a more optimized gaming console version where you could just have it function more like a gaming console if you wanted it to. Anyway, that would be really cool, honestly, for me. So I wouldn't mind them going that route if you could get a more console-like gaming PC for your living room. But anyway. Also, I wanted to mention that Star Wars Jedi Survivor's Patch 9 has introduced performance improvements, ray tracing improvements, and has finally removed Denuvo DRM. I have not had the chance yet to jump into this game, but I have looked at a bunch of people's feedback in, Reddit and comment sections and whatnot to get an idea of what users are saying about this. And while they do mention that there are still places in the game that can stutter and everything, it is Unreal Engine still. It's not perfect. A lot of people are reporting significantly better experience than what they had previously. So if you'd been waiting on this game to finally be fixed, I can't tell you with my own hands-on experience that it's finally perfect, but it sounds like it has been massively improved, and my guess would be this is probably going to be about as good as it gets, although who knows if maybe we get some minor updates from here. And Denuvo's gone too, so there's that. Want to mention that I can't think of any time I've ever seen anything quite like this. So a indie game publisher, they publish Stray, but they've published a lot of other really high quality indie games. Annapurna Interactive, their entire team resigned, all of them at once, apparently due to conflicts with management or the owner, I guess it is. So that's kind of shocking. Now, you can read more into that if you'd like on those details, but I had recently, I really like Remedy games, Control, Alan Wake. They're right up my alley on games. So I'd recently heard that Control 2 had a deal with Annapurna for both, I think, publishing Control 2 along with maybe working on some TV or movie type products related to the Control and Alan Wake 2 universe. They're within the same universe. But apparently Remedy is saying that its deal with Annapurna is unaffected by the gaming division's turmoil. So there's that. All right, hopefully you guys found this video useful and or interesting. I think it's absolutely huge news about FSR 4. And also don't forget to check out Jawa. It offers you the simplest and fastest way to sell your parts, including that new selling your CPU option. And if you're looking to buy on Jawa, don't forget I can save you $10 off your first purchase using code OWEN10. And again, huge thank you to them for sponsoring today's video, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.